Welcome back to SLIPS.N.TIPS, guys. My name is Chris, back for another video. In this video, I want to cover 3 NRL games with you guys for this weekend in round 22. Now, we're looking at the Thursday night game and the 2 Friday night games. We've got the Broncos versus the Roosters on Thursday, as well as the Rabbitohs versus the Tigers and the Storm versus the Eels. Now, for this video, I've added in a try-scorer only multi-special that I like, my favourite try scorers for this weekend, as well as my favourite head-to-head bets across the AFL and NRL. So there's a lot to cover. Now, before we get into the tips, I just wanted to thank everyone again for your support on my YouTube. It really means a lot. All your comments, all your DMs, your thoughts, your ideas. Really appreciate it. This try-scorer only multi actually comes from one of you guys in my comments from last week from YouTube. So shout out to you. You know who you are. I really appreciate the idea, brother. Can't wait to talk about it with you guys in this video. Now, just want to remind everybody again, please follow my socials. I've got my Telegram group, which is a free group. I post all my tips there for free first. Instagram has all my other tips because I cover NRL and AFL every single game, guys, every single round. And I like to have my write-ups there for every single tip. So my Instagram is very active. And my TikTok group, just support me there. My TikTok page really means a lot. Now, before we get into the tips, guys, let me just remind everybody, please gamble responsibly. At the end of the day, this is not financial advice. This is all about having fun. This is all about us controlling our units. And there's no 100% way to make money. And there's no 100% locks. I say it every week, guys. It's super important. Please gamble responsibly. And if you feel like you're losing control, just know that there's a lot of help and support out there for free. So with that being said, guys, let's not waste any more time. Let's look at game 1. Let's get straight into it. Game 1. Got the Broncos versus the Roosters. Now, this is going to be a really good game, guys. We've got the Broncos versus the Roosters at the Gabba. So we've got a bit of a multiverse happening here with the NRL being played at an AFL ground. It should be great weather-wise. I mean, there's actually a roof there, I'm fairly certain, so it shouldn't be an issue. However, it's still going to be dry and sunny, 16 degrees. So weather-wise, we've got no issues. Both teams are fully healthy, this is the first thing I noticed before looking at any markets or punting on this game. I noticed that both teams are basically fully healthy here. Now, there's only 2 outs for the Broncos, being Jesse Arthurs and Marty Tapau. However, I still think their Broncos are still full strength, even though Jesse Arthurs and Marty come on and influence the game a lot. It's not that big of a deal, though, in my opinion. The Roosters' record against the Broncos, winning the last 3 games against them, that was also another thing that I thought of. And the Roosters' amazing first half they had last week against the Titans. When I was watching that game last week against the Titans, all I could think was, wow, the Roosters are back. It's super late, but at the end of the day, the way that they played is how I expected them to play all week, or all season, I should say, sorry. So, yeah, that was another thing that we have to consider. Now, Broncos shutting up the haters is another thing we have to talk about, me being one of them. In my past 2 videos, I've been saying, I'm waiting for the Broncos to crumble. Last year, around this time of year, they weren't clutch. So, we spoke about that a lot, but they've proven me wrong and a few other people wrong. They've won 6 of their last 7 games. So they are proving that they are clutch, and I think they've learned their lesson from last year. The last thing as well I want to talk about before we get into the tips is that the Broncos could be going for the minor premiership as well. They're tied with Penrith up the top. There is a bit of, I think there's 100 plus points difference in regards to the points differential between Penrith and Broncos. However, 1 win or 1 loss could determine who wins the minor premiership. So we have to think about that. That could have been a goal set by the Broncos at the start of the season to win the minor premiership. So that's another thing to consider as well. Now, just like every week, guys, I'm going to put the stats on the screen for you guys. These are my favorite stats that I've gathered. All of these stats are based around also my bets and what I'm thinking of punting on this game. So these are my favorite stats. Pause the video and have a read if you like. Now, let's get into the tips, guys. Let's talk about it. Now, for this game, I'm looking at my usual format. I've got my flip, my triple up, and a quadruple up, as well as a 6 times bet with all my favorite markets combined. So let's talk about each single one. Now, for this one, for my flip, my safest, my favorite bet, I like to just focus on a result. I'm looking at Broncos winning this game. Now, Roosters could win. I know there's a lot of talk online that this is the game the Broncos let go. They could level out after they lose this game and, refocus as before finals come. But I just don't see it happening. I think the Broncos are going to outclass the Roosters. What we saw from the Roosters in the second half put a bit of salt on the wound in the sense of what they did so well in the first half. They came out and they let the Titans score 3 converted tries. Stuff like that makes me really worried. I mean, the Roosters themselves, I kind of given them a chance round 17, round 10, round 20. I kept saying, give them one more chance. And they just haven't proven that they are the vintage or the classic Roosters that we know, the premiership winning Roosters. So I'm going with Broncos head to head. I'm giving the Roosters 19.5 points to cover. So I think that this game is going to be close enough in that sense where it won't be a full blowout. However, if it is 3 converted tries the difference, I think the Broncos could win by that amount. So 19.5 should be good for the Roosters to cover. If they come out and they compete like they did in that first half against the Titans, this should be a close game than everyone thinks. So that's why I've given them that. So basically we need the Broncos to win and we need the Roosters to keep it within 19.5 points, basically 20 points. Now for my triple up, looking at Stags anytime. I'm yet to go on him much this season. He's always one of those players who when he scores, I'm always thinking, why don't I jump on him? Because he's so aggressive, he's so big, he knows how to play. Now, the main reason why I'm liking him here for this game and I'm taking him here is because of his matchup. He's going to be matched up against Billy Smith, who, no offense and respectfully, I think he's one of the weakest centers in the league. I don't really think he's up to that NRL grade just yet. He's been starting and he's got the experience, but I think Stags can just absolutely monster this matchup here, and I'm expecting him to go over this game. Now, I've paired that up with Broncos alternative points over 15.5 points because, like I said, I think they're going to score anywhere from 3+ converted tries, and I think that they can get at least 2 tries in each half. Adam Reynolds kicking in such good form as well. All we really need here is 3 tries where he kicks the conversion. So I don't think Broncos will have any issues here with that. The Roosters alternative points as well as another leg that I chucked in here, looking at 8.5. So basically a converted try and a penalty, or 2+, 3+, 4+ converted tries. Like I said, if I saw what we saw last week where they're going to come out and be aggressive, I think that they can cover this as well. So that's my triple up, guys. Basically, Stags is the main one. I think once he goes over, the points should hopefully take care of themselves. Now, for my 4x bet, I like Cobbo anytime. I mean, it's hard to not get on Cobbo at the end of the day. The way he's been playing is just so impressive. Now, I want more value out of him, so I've looked at him for the first half. Now, I went back and looked at it, and basically, he scored all of his tries in the first half this season within 60% of the tries that he scored. So I went back and looked at every single game that he scored a try in, and 60% of them have come in the first half. It makes sense. I mean, he's usually the first, second, or third try scorer. You guys could chuck that instead if you like that more. However, I just got a good feeling he's going to come out aggressive. They're going to play to him. And if there's a lot of points in the first half, even better. So I'm going to get more value out of him here. I like him for the first half, specifically to score a try. Now, I've added in Tedesco and Daniel Tupou. At the end of the day, I think either one of these guys will score. Tupou, I spoke about last week, if he were to get one more try, he would actually be leading the Roosters as the all-time try scorer. So it sucks. He went over last week and they celebrated and it was a massive deal on the field, but then the try got taken away. So that's a bit of a shame. I think they'll come out and they'll try to, recreate that moment and give him his actual celebrations because it's a big milestone. So that's why I think either one of these two guys are aggressive. Now, if you look at the stats as well, both Tedesco and Daniel Tupou are supported in how their form has been. So I think either one of them can score. Maybe both of them could score. But I like this option. Now, I've paired this up with over 29.5 points. Once again, looking at the stats, the amount of points that the Roosters are leaking as well as the Broncos are playing, I think over 29.5 is going to hit. I think the Broncos alone could get 25+ points. So, if the Roosters get over 2 converted tries, even better. So that's why I like that. Now for my 6x bet, I'm looking at a combination of all of my favorite markets that I've spoken about so far into one. This is my usual style. And like I said in the previous videos now, I like to put my most units, 4 to 5 units on the flip and then 3 to 4 units on the triple up. Those are my main kind of bets that I rely on. Those are my favorite bets. And then the 4x and the 5x and the 6x and whatnot, I usually put anywhere from 1 to 3 units just for a bit of fun. So that's what we're aiming for here. Hopefully we can get a sweep. And this is how I see this game going, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Send me a DM if you agree. And yeah, let's see how we go. Hopefully this is a sweep. Let's look at game 2. We've got the Rabbitohs versus the Tigers. Another interesting game. Once again, another game where it's hard to find value as the Rabbitohs are such short favorites. Now, before we get to the tips, guys, let's talk about it. We've got the Rabbitohs versus the Tigers. This one's going to be at Scully Park. So this is in West Tamworth in New South Wales. Technically, it's a home game to the Tigers here. However, it's in New South Wales, both being New South Wales clubs. Not that much travelling will be involved. It's going to be a dry game. It's scheduled to be 13 degrees, so hopefully it is. That's perfect to the Rabbitohs play style. They play so fast, so aggressive, so dry games are just, exactly what Rabbitohs players want to hear. Now, before we get into the tips, let's talk about the first things we thought of. First thing that I thought of is Latrell Mitchell's actually going to be back. Fingers crossed, hopefully. Now, last week, if you go back and look at my last video from last week, I went on a big rant about him and how much of an impact he is to this team. I mean, it's so obvious. I don't need to get into it with you all. You all should know. So him being back actually is something that I really like because I think last week they probably thought, oh, he's not quite at 100%, so let's wait one more week. Now, the Tigers is obviously a matchup where they're heavily favorites, so that's probably a game where they look at it and say, this is a good game for you to bounce back. So yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. Now the second thing as well, for the Tigers fans, Luke Brooks is back from injury. Another massive in. Whether you love him or hate him, at the end of the day, he is their 7. He's in such a key position. So he's back. That's a big deal. The Tigers are on a 7-game losing streak. The Bunnies falling out of the top 8 was something else that I had written down as my kind of first things to think about, because the fact that they're out of the top 8 right now as it sits, looking at the Para game, which we'll talk about next, that could be huge as far as where they land. Now, Bunnies are, at one point, the NRL Premiership favourites to win the whole thing. We all thought, I think by round 10, it was going to be them and Penrith in the final. So the fact that we're now talking about them in 9th place on the ladder is a bit of a concern, and I'm sure that they know that, and they've been talking about that as well. We're looking at the Bunnies winning the last 7 of their 9 meetings between these two teams as well. That's something we have to talk about. And I'm personally avoiding any alternative points as far as the overs go, because last time these teams met, it was 20-0, and a lot of punters, including myself and my tips, didn't get up that game because we thought it was going to be such a high-scoring game. And it should be on paper. However, we saw what the Tigers can do defensively sometimes. So that's another thing to consider. Let's look at the stats, guys. Once again, my favorite stats that I've collected for this game. Once again, pause the video, have a read if you want to have a full read of all of them. They're mainly favouring the Rabbitohs, as you can imagine. They're favouring these try scorers that I'm going to talk about in a second. So yeah, have a read if you want to have a read of these favourite stats. Once again, the flip, my best bet, my favourite bet. What is it going to be? It's going to be Latrell Mitchell. I spoke about him last week. Like I said, go back and have a listen to that video if you want to hear me talk about how much of an impact he is. I spoke about him and Cody Walker and the combination and the fact that they actually find AJ so well on the wing. He's just such a huge asset to this Bunnies team. It makes such a big difference. So I'm liking him to come back and remind everybody in the league that he's back. I think he'll go over. Once again, the Tigers have major issues in containing opposition fullbacks. So that's another reason why I like him as well. Now, I've paired that up with the Rabbitohs 13 plus. I can't see the Tigers keeping this game close. They haven't historically. And right now, we're looking at the Tigers. They're scoring anywhere from 2 or 3 tries a game. Now, Appy's playing for them, which I love for the Tigers. However, at the end of the day, if the Bunnies are going to get going, if it's going to be a really active game where they're in control, they can score 6+ tries. So I don't think the Tigers can keep up with that. Now, for my triple up, I'm taking AJ 2 or more. Now, hopefully this hits. This could hit by halftime. Hopefully, by the first half, he comes out, he gets the early one or even the first one. He's got a good history scoring in doubles. It's in the stats. He scored 2+ tries in 3 of his last 4 away games. With Latrell being back, this is another major reason why I really love him to have a big game and score 2 or more. The Tigers' alternative points, I've paired that up with AJ, and I've gone for over 4.5. Now, this is 1 converted try. I think the Tigers will be good enough to get 2 or 3 tries. Like I said, anytime Api Coruscant is playing, either he produces the points himself or he sets up 1 or 2 players. He's just that big of a player for the Tigers. So over 4.5 is very realistic. Brings it to nice 3 value. Now let's talk about the quadruple up, the 4x bet, the $4 bet. I'm looking at David Norfoluma anytime. Now, I haven't been on him much this season. To be fair, he's been quiet this season as well. Now, I was a little bit reluctant putting him in, but the fact that he's 1 try away from being the first ever Tigers player to have 100+ tries, that's just amazing to me. I love these milestone games. If you know me, if you know my tips very well, I look a lot at the psychological factors as well. Stats are great and all, but at the end of the day, I think David Norfoluma is going to know that he's 1 try away from scoring and breaking the record all time for this club. So I really like him. I'm just going to back him here. I mean, he's on the wing, so at the end of the day, he's in the prime position to do so. He's been quiet. I think he's due for a big game. I'm really, really hoping he has a big game. He scores a try and he has a really great game. So that's why I'm backing him. Now, I paired that up with Rabbitohs race to 10 points. Like I said, I'm taking the 13 plus, so I think they're going to dominate anyway. I think they're going to come out aggressive. Hopefully, AJ scores the first try. Norfoluma next. That'll be perfect. And I think they'll get to 10 points first. I added this in now with the line. So I was looking at this game thinking, how much of a margin should we go out? Now, if Latrell's going to come out from his injury a bit slow, or if he's going to come out aggressive, either way, I think the Tigers have done a good job of at least trying and at least competing. I think they can cover 33.5 points. The stats back me on this as well. But 33.5 points is a lot of points. I really do think, it could be a 12 to 32 type of scoreline. It could be even a bit more, but yeah, 33.5 points is massive. We basically just need the Tigers to show up and compete. My $5.25 bet is there as well. This is a combination of all of my favorite legs. Once again, the goal is to sweep. Let's hope we can get all these legs up. So that's why I like it as well. So yeah, those are my tips, guys, for this game. Let me know your thoughts. Once again, send me a DM. Write a comment down below if you agree or disagree. And yeah, this will be good. I'm so keen to see Latrell Mitchell back. Everyone is. Let's look at game 3, looking at the Storm versus the Eels. It's going to be another good game. This is the second game for the Friday night. It's going to be at Marvel Stadium, so another AFL ground, which is great. Multiverse type of stuff I always talk about on my page. It's in Melbourne, so that's another big factor we'll talk about in a second. Weather-wise, no issues. I think there's actually a roof there as well, so same story, shouldn't be a problem. But even if there isn't, it's 14 degrees, should be dry, so no issues weather-wise. Now, let's talk about the first things first. The Storm only losing back-to-back games once this season. They lost it in rounds 2 and 3, very early on in the season. Now, the first thing I thought of was that, Craig Bellamy and the culture of this Storm side, they rarely lose games back-to-back because whatever went wrong in that loss against the Knights last week, I think they're going to go, they've already gone and they've made the adjustments necessary to bounce back. They're just so smart and strong and strategizing against how they're going to play against Parramatta. I think they're going to do very well. I like some of the changes as well, which we'll talk about in a second. But the first thing I thought of is that Storm rarely lose back-to-back losses. It's super rare. The fact that they're playing in Melbourne as well is another huge factor we've got to talk about as well. Eels are sitting right on 8th place, so talking about the Bunnies as well. Depending on where we go with this, Parramatta will be playing after them, so I'm sure they'll know, and they can expect probably the Bunnies to win. So they could lose their top 8 spot, which is huge for Parramatta. So Olam's been dropped, Big Nelson, Remus Smith, Tarek Sims, all missing for the Storm. Like I said, not good. However, I think it's going to be light at the end of the tunnel for Justin Olam. I think he's been dropped because of his form, so that's okay, because he can bounce back. He's got the talent, he's a freak, but the fact that he's not playing hurts. Big Nelson out as well hurts a lot. The Eels are missing Sean Lane and Sevo still, and RCG still, so those are some big losses as well, so they kind of balance each other out. The Eels have an amazing record, winning 4 of the last 5 matches between these two sides, but the Storm have beaten them 3 out of 4 of their last games in Melbourne. So you've got an interesting stat where you've got the Parramatta with the recent form, however, the Storm with the Melbourne form being in Melbourne. So they're hard to beat when they're at home. Now let's look at the stats, guys. Stats are on the screen. Like I said, pause the video, have a read. These are my favorite stats. They're favoring mainly the Storm because of the fact that they're playing in Melbourne. And these guys, try scorers, these are my favorite try scorers for this game. Now let's look at the tips, guys. Let's look at the main event. So for the tips, guys, let's look at the $2 flip. Once again, I like to keep it nice and clean. I think the Storm are going to win. I think they're going to do very well this game. I can't see them losing twice in a row, so I'm taking them head-to-head. I've given the Eels, similar to the Tigers and Bunnies game, 19.5 points. I really hope this is a competitive game. Eels have a lot to play for. The top 8, their position on the ladder, they've got a lot of motivation just as much as the Storm. So I think it's going to be competitive, a bit closer than people think. So I'm giving them 19.5 points, which is basically 3+ converted tries. So let's hope that hits. Now for my triple up, I've gone with Coates anytime. It's so hard to ignore him in his form. He scored 20 tries in 27 games in Melbourne, which is just a freakish stat. I paired him up with Meaney or Gutherson to score anytime, play A or player B. I like these guys just as much. They're both fullbacks, so they're in the position, they're primed to score. I think Gutherson carries this a bit more, and we'll talk about a bit more that why. But yeah, I really like this bet because I couldn't decide on which one more. But if I had to pick, I think Gutherson can get it done. Taking the Eels over 8.5 points because, like you guys saw in the stats, they've scored 10 or more points in every single game this season, which is huge. They're such an attacking team. They rarely play defense, so that makes perfect sense why. I've added that in with Meaney to score 4 points. If he scores, then that's already a tick done, so we'll take that. Now, for the $4.60 bet, this is a nice, clean, simple one. I'm looking at Mitchell Moses to score. He scored 2 against the Cowboys last week. Him and Gutho are doing absolutely everything for this Parramatta side. The fact that Moses has also scored 7 tries in his 16 appearances this season helps as well. But my main reason why I like him is because of what I saw last week. I think Parramatta are hugely reliant on him and Gutherson. They're both the strike guys. When you looked at their tries as well last week, whenever there was a line break caused by either one of them, they were both there supporting each other. These are the top guys of this side. I think Moses will put the Eels on his back, just like Gutho. And yeah, I just got a really good feeling Mitch Moses will score here, and it's good value at $4.60 in my opinion. Now my $5.25 bet, that's a combination once again of all my favorite legs. Hopefully we get a sweep, Moses being the big one here. I think if he goes over early and Coates goes over, I'm not really worried about the rest of the legs. And yeah, it's going to be a really good game, guys. So I'm excited. So those are my tips for this game, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Super exciting game. I think if there's an upset, it probably might be the Parramatta game. However, unlikely in my opinion. I got to back the Storm. It's impossible to bet against them when they're in Melbourne, so that's why I like them a lot. Now, for the first time, I want to do my try scorer only bet. I haven't done this before on YouTube. I've had whales in the past before and other, 10 to 10K challenges, bets and what on my Instagram, but this is a fun one. So what I did was I basically looked at the whole round and I looked at, in true Slips and Tips fashion, what are we going to look at as my favorite try scorers? Now, some of them I did the player A or player B, because if you know me, if you know my page, Slips and Tips, we love the play A, player B option, because I couldn't decide 100% on one, but I like both of them. So we'll talk about it. Now, it should be on the screen, guys. Have a look. I'll quickly run through it. We're looking at Cobbo and Daniel Tupou for the first game, Latrell Mitchell and David Norfoluma for the second game, and then Meaney and Coates. Now, I already spoke about these 3 games, guys, so yeah, those are pretty self-explanatory. Now let's look at the other players. Now I paired up Ponga and Best for another reason that I couldn't decide between the two, which one I liked more. Bradman Best has scored at least 1 try in each of Newcastle's last 3 matches. He's been red hot since Origin, and Ponga scored a try in 3 of his last 4 appearances against Canberra. So I don't know what he's got against Canberra, but he loves scoring against them. So I paired those 2 up. Now I added in Tyrell Sloan. He's been good to us for the past few weeks. He's scored a try in each of his last 3 appearances, so he's red hot. In open space, it's game over. He's such a quick player. I really like him. I'm going to back him as well. I've added in Critter. I think he has scored a try in each of his last 3 appearances as well. Penrith and the Sharks game is going to be hopefully a high-scoring game. We'll see. And I think Penrith will have no issues against the Sharks. So Critter's looking good. He's always good to us. I'm going to ride with him as well. And then added in Jake Averillo. This is going to be an interesting one. We'll talk about it as well in my next head-to-head bet. But I really like Averillo here against the Dolphins. Just to remind you all, that's where he's going next season. And players have got a knack to play better, show up, and be way more aggressive when they're up against their future club. So, yeah, I think the Bulldogs are going to have a big game. I think Averillo is going to be a big part of it. He's at fullback. I love him at fullback. And, yeah, that's the main reason why I like him, because he's going there next year. I think he's going to have a lot of motivation. For the last leg, I've added in Khan Pereira and Val Holmes. Couldn't pick which one I like more out of these 2 guys, so we're going for the player A, player B option. Slips and Tips, true fashion. We love it. So yeah, AKP has scored at least 1 try in 7 of his last 8 matches as an underdog. And Holmes has done very well against the Titans at Seabus. So I really like him to score. I think he's going to have no issues. So that's my try scorer only bet for this weekend, guys. It's paying $47.89. So it's a bit of a fun one. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to put multiple units on it, just 1 unit for me, but still, this could be really fun if this hits. I got a really good feeling about all of these guys. Now, let's look at my head-to-head bet, my last bet for this round. Now, I wanted to pair up my favorite bets from the AFL and the NRL, my favorite head-to-head bets. Now, I've obviously covered the Rabbitohs and the Storm and the Broncos game, so, take that as you will, add in those or switch those up if you'd like. But I wanted to add in the 3 other NRL games that I'm not covering in this video. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the AFL teams first. I'm looking at the Brisbane Lions. I really like them to win this game against Gold Coast. They've won each of their last 9 matches against the Gold Coast. They've got a really good history. I'm backing them to win. I think it'll probably be 40 plus as well. I would not be surprised. I've chucked in Port Adelaide. This team's red hot. At the end of the day, this is their season. They're on fire. They're doing so well. They've won each of their last 10 matches as a favourite. So, yeah, I got a good feeling about Port. I love how they play. I think they'll have no issues. And then I've chucked in North Melbourne. Now, this is an interesting one. North Melbourne, I mean, this is the battle of the spoon in the AFL world. So it could be a messy game. I'm not in love with this. However, I got a really good feeling about North Melbourne. I've been watching every single game of the AFL, and the way that North Melbourne have been playing is I just trust them a bit more than the West Coast. Now, both of these clubs are in shambles, so this is why I say it's a bit of a mess. However, if I had to pick, I really like North Melbourne. They've won their last 3 games against West Coast as well, so the history backs me and backs them. So I got a good feeling about them here. Now for the NRL head-to-head bets, I've chucked in Penrith. This speaks for itself. Like I said, I think they'll have no issues against Cronulla. Cronulla right now are not in a good form. I've been trying to find reasons to like them. And lately, the selections that they're making and the way that they're playing, they're just not looking 100%. I think Penrith are back. Nathan Cleary, what we saw last week against the Doggies was a little glimpse of what they can do. And I just think they'll have no issues against the Sharkies. Now for my upset, I'm looking at the Bulldogs and the Dolphins game. I really like the Bulldogs here. Now I rarely tip them because obvious reasons. They're not doing so well this season, injuries and all that. But the fact that you've got Averillo at fullback, he's going to the Dolphins next year. You've got the Fox playing now. Finally, he's back. And a big in is Kickout and Sexton. So, with all those guys playing, I think the Bulldogs have a really, really good chance of getting a win. It's going to be hard because they're traveling, but you can't really trust the Dolphins either lately how they've been playing. So, It's my upset for this round, guys. I really think it's good value. I really like the doggies. I'll speak about it a bit more on the Sunday when I do my tips and my write-ups for that specific game on my Instagram. So be sure to follow me and subscribe to my Instagram if you haven't already. And yeah, I just got a good feeling about the doggies. Let's hope, fingers crossed. Now for the Cowboys game, I've added in Cowboys to win. I think North Queensland, they've won their last 7 matches in Queensland and they're on a 6-game win streak. Self-explanatory, speaks for themselves. I mean, these guys are red hot. I have to back them. And yeah, I got a good feeling about that. So that's my head-to-head bet, guys. AFL, NRL. Let me know your thoughts. The odds are $11, so not as hectic as the try scorers, but I got a good feeling, and I'm going to chuck 2 units on this one. So those are my tips for this round, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you guys for supporting me once again. I really appreciate it. Good luck to everyone this weekend. Hopefully we get them ticks. Hopefully we get some sweeps. And yeah, be sure to subscribe to my Instagram if you want more. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.